So welcome back to the second part of the tutorial, and in this part we'll talk more about the spells in specific, more the utility spell that you'll have, and also I'll show you some examples in game, more specifically how you should use your hand, your table, and your buffs. So then let's start the video. Let the intro run. So now let's check some important spells. In each elemental way, you have one spell that will consume your hand, but just the cards from that element. So let's say that we are playing as a Water Ecaflip and we have 3 cards on our hand and 1 card from air on our hand. What happens is that when you play Luck, it will consume only the cards that are water. In this case, you can see that Luck will give erosion, it will give damage in the water element, it will give a debuff that puts the enemy with less critical resistance, which is nice because this way is to do critical damage. So you're putting basically the enemy vulnerable to critics. And then you play the card from the club suit. So you only play the 3 cards on your hand because the 3 cards are the ones that are clubs. And if you don't have any card on your hand, this spell, instead of consuming, it will give you a 3 AP card from the club's suit. And if you check here, it says from -10 to 40. This will depend on how many water cards do you have on your hand. So this is for the water element. Then you will have the Jess, which is for the air element, which will basically do the same thing but for pushback. Then you have the Bellot. So this one is very interesting. So instead of doing a debuff, it basically increases the area of effect of your spells. So pretty much if you have 1 Jack and 1 Ace on your hand, you'll do a 1 cell and a 4 cell ring AoE. So that's a very unique spell. And so that's also very interesting. So you know how to clean up mobs, how to do damage in a bigger AoE or on the AoE that you really need. And finally, we have the Blackjack, which is the healing way. So in here, we give the more erosion, the more cards we have. For example, if we have a 2 AP card from intelligence and a 5 AP card on our hand, and we do the Blackjack, you'll get -7% of erosion because it's -2 from the 2 AP and -5 from the 5 AP card, okay? So this can really stack up to really interesting damage, mainly for example, the critical one. So if you have everything summed up, the enemy gets -100 critical resistance. So let's go to an enemy here and check what we learned until now. So in this case, I just have here the 6 spells of the water element. So let's stack our hand. So I use the Yahtzee, so I get a number 2 card on me. Then I'll use the Craps, which is a 3 AP spell. So now we'll have a number 3 card on our hand. So if we do now 4 AP spell, we'll get a 4. And now if we do a 5 AP, we get all the cards from the same element on our hand. And then if we have Luck, we can use Luck to clean our hand and it will play the hand. So it's important when you see the spell, if it says place card from the club suit, it will say that you place the card. If it says discards the cards, it means that you will discard the cards, but you'll not get any buffs on it, okay? And this happens, for example, for the all or nothing spell. So we'll use our Luck here. And now we'll have here all our buffs that we managed to get in here. So we'll get +4 critical, +6, +8, and +10 critical, because if we go here, pin the tooltip, check the Queen of Clubs, we can see that the critical, it increases +6% with the 3 AP spell. For example, if we come here to the Ace of Clubs, we can see that it increases +10%. So for each number that we have on our hand, it will give a different percentage of critical, but everything sums up. So if you can check here our characteristics, we have here on our critical +28%. So it's a lot of buff that you can get from these spells. And plus that, we also have the combination that we did, which is a Royal Straight in Clubs, and we get 140 chance on top of that. So in the beginning, you'll not have access to all these type of different AP spells cards, but that's fine because you can do, like, for example, Yahtzee and the Craps, and then use Luck. And you'll still get some critical, okay? If you have other spells on your hand from different elements, you'll do still combinations that will give you, for example, power. The enemy also will get a debuff and will get -100 critical resistance. This means that you're basically doing plus 100 damage per critical hit that you do. So just taking in consideration that all the spells that do erosion are the spells that consume your hand from that specific elemental way. Okay, so now let's talk about the Lucky Draw. The Lucky Draw, it's a very important spell in the beginning and pretty much all over the game. And what it does is basically you draw a card and you get an AP back, so we basically for free this spell. So if you are against an enemy and you draw a card, you got, in this case, a 4 AP card from the fire element, then you get a 2 AP card from the earth element, and then you get a 2 from the air element. Then you get a 4. So basically it's very random, but you can use also this to your advantage, because if you know your passive really well, you know the combinations that you can have. For example, in this one, you have a 4, so you have a king of hearts, and then you have 2 jacks of different elements, and 1 ace of earth, okay? So then if you have, for example, let's say the bluff card here, you will have consumed each card of your elements. You get plus 30 critical resistance, plus 10 critical resistance from earth, plus 10 from pushback damage, and plus 30 heals. But besides that, you also got plus 120 because you have 2 jacks and 2 kings on your hand. So this is pretty fun to use because you basically just like drawing cards from your deck and seeing like how lucky you are and how much you can do with these combinations. So let's see again another hand. So I draw a 2, a 4, a 3, and now we have a 2, 3, 4, and I can do now misfortune to get a 5, and then use bluff to consume the cards and get the royal straight, because I had the 2, 3, 4, and 5. I had the jacks, queens, kings, and ace. So this is very lucky based, but you can control your luck. And also, if you draw the card that you already have on your hand, you get 1 AP instead. So for example, I have 10 AP, and if I got a card that I already have, I would get 8 AP. Let me show you again. I have a 3, I have a 2, I have a 4. Also happened the same thing, but now I can do the misfortune again to have the 2, 3, 4, and 5. But for example, imagine if you had draw the 2, the 4, and the 5. Then you could do a spell that does the 3, for example, the crabs. So you can have the 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and then do a spell that consumes your hand. And then you have again the royal straight, okay? So the most important thing on each class is that you see the order of effects. In this case, on the Lucky Draw, we play the hand, then we draw a card, then we do plus 1 AP for the current turn. So if we don't really understand what this means, we can check here. So draws a card from the Ecaflip poker. If the hand is full, so if basically we have already 4 hands, instead of drawing a card, you play your hand. So this is pretty important, mainly for the beginning, because we don't have many tools to consume our cards. Mainly in the beginning that we just have spells that consume our specific elemental cards, and we don't have really for everything like we have for the bluff on a level 90. So we can use the Lucky Draw to play our hand nevertheless, and even get 1 AP back. So basically just get buffs without losing any type of AP. So it's pretty strong. So in this part we learned mainly how to play our hand, and I gave you some examples also in-game against the pouch on how to do it. And on the next part I will explain what is the table, and I will also explain all the other utility spells. So see you on the next part.